Hi to those of you that have just joined. Welcome. We're going to give it a few minutes to let people trickle in before we get started. Welcome. Thanks for your patience. We'll just give it another minute or so to give people time to get in before we get started here. Okay, well, welcome, folks. Thanks for coming. My name is Hattie Berg. I am the Senior Manager of Account Management here at the American Forest Foundation. And we're going to spend some time today talking about our program, the Family Forest Carbon Program, to help provide you with some information and understanding to see if it might be a good fit for you and your land. A few housekeeping notes before we jump into the presentation. If you have questions, we ask that you use that Q&A function down on the bottom of your screen. You should see a little icon that says Q&A. So drop your questions there, please, and we'll get to as many of them as possible at the end of the presentation. And if for some reason we're not able to get to your question, we're happy to follow up afterwards so that you can get those answers that you're looking for. And another thing to note is that this presentation is being recorded, and we will send out a link in the next few days so that you can watch it again or share it with your family or co-owners on your property so you have access to this information again later. So again, my name is, whoops, slides are moving around a little bit. My name is Hattie Berg. Again, I'm Senior Manager of Account Management. My team and I act as the point of contact for landowners who are exploring enrollment in our program. And if you were interested in moving forward to explore this opportunity, you would work with one of my team members to learn about the program, go through qualification and project planning, and then we would be able to provide you with an offer to consider, help you understand the contract, and basically provide all the information you need to make an informed decision about participation. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a program overview here today, and then I'll hand it over to our senior forestry managers in the Midwest, Brittany Vanderwall and Chrissy Shaw. They can talk to you about eligibility and criteria related to forestry for our practices in the Midwest region. And then Katie Wilson, our Senior Manager of Community and Sustained Engagement, will be able to speak more to the benefits of participating in our program and some of the benefits you could expect as, when you join the community of our participating landowners. Katie will walk us through Q&A at the end. Like I mentioned, please use that button at the bottom. and outline next steps. So if you decide you're interested in exploring this opportunity a little bit more, we'll outline what you would need to do for next steps there. So who is the American Forest Foundation? The American Forest Foundation is a national conservation nonprofit organization. We work with family forest owners to make meaningful conservation impact on their land. And we date back to the first half of the 1900s. We've always been in the business of supporting landowners who are interested in sustainably stewarding their land, looking to make conservation impact and getting the most value out of their land that they can, while looking to protect the opportunity to pass their forest down through generations. So essentially, we're in the business of helping landowners like yourselves. And why do we offer the Family Forest Carbon Program? Well, traditionally, carbon markets have been very inaccessible to smaller landowners. Historically, you would need anywhere between 5 and 10,000 acres to even consider creating your own carbon project, both because of upfront costs and just the headache of starting a program. So when we talk about smaller landowners, that's most of us, right? Like 39% of forests in the United States are owned by families and individuals like yourselves who really care a lot about your woods, but don't often have an opportunity to access some of that potential value that your property has, such as carbon markets. So AFF, American Forest Foundation, in conjunction with the Nature Conservancy, developed the Family Forest Carbon Program for landowners to, essentially open that door to you, right? So we are taking hundreds of family forest landowners and basically accumulating and aggregating all of that carbon impact so that we can develop a carbon project and then pass those benefits back to landowners such as yourselves. And as a nonprofit, we are really just interested in supporting landowners and supporting our mission and passing benefits back to you. So that's what we're here to do. And in order to do that, it's important to know how FFCP and AFF are funded. So first and foremost, we are funded by carbon markets. We enter into carbon credit purchase agreements with companies such as Netflix or REI. And in exchange for that, they provide funding to us. They purchase those credits that we generate through this program, and that allows us to fund landowners with operations, financial resources, forest management plan, and forestry support. And we'll get more into those benefits in a few slides here. But in addition to that, we also receive grants and private donations, philanthropy. Ultimately, our end goal is to be fully funded by the carbon market from the business that we're doing there, but it's new still. So until we get to that point, we continue to rely on some alternate funding sources as we build the program. So I mentioned the why of FFCP, but what is the Family Forest Carbon Program? So we help landowners who have at least 30 eligible forested acres to reach their forest management goals by providing income and forestry guidance and forest management plans, as well as some additional benefits that I'll get into in more detail here. The program is intended to improve forest health and, really the whole ecosystem. So your soil, water, air, and your timber value as well. And we rely on the carbon markets, which help make all of that possible for us. So yeah, what do we offer? We offer guaranteed annual payments. We want to help bridge that, forest markets by providing annual guaranteed payments to our participants. And you would know what those payments look like right up front. So if you decide to move forward with us, we would provide you with an offer for enrollment. We are going to lay out the 20 years of payments, and those are guaranteed. So you know exactly, what to expect. And those aren't going to change based on the market. We do expect growth in carbon markets, and that valuation is built into what we're offering landowners in their payments. And if it doesn't perform as expected, those payments are still guaranteed. You don't take on that risk. You're going to get paid what we've offered, and you're shielded from that market behavior. So benefits to landowners. I've definitely talked a little bit about financial payments, and we really, have three kind of main areas that we benefit landowners. We provide forest management plan support, whether that's developing a new plan if you don't have one, or updating an existing plan. And then we also provide access to professional forestry support. So let's just dive into that a little bit more. So the guaranteed annual payments, that's your money. It can be used for anything. You can put it towards your taxes. Something to note is that it's considered taxable income. I think that's important to note, but it can go towards anything, right? That's your money. You can invest it in a project that you might want to accomplish on your property. Say you wanted to manage invasive species, or, cultivate your wildlife habitat. But you could even put it towards your car. I mean, that's your money. You get to decide however you want to use it. And beyond that payment that you get every year, you can also expect an increased value of your timber in your forest as a result of implementing these practices. So our practice is intended to help your trees grow further into maturity, which should improve both the quantity and the quality of your timber, and over the duration of that 20-year contract period. Which of course means that at the end of our contract partnership term, you would have more financial opportunity than you would had you harvested earlier or more heavily, or not implemented our practices. And importantly, landowners also retain full ownership, privacy, and control of your land. So we're not telling you how you can use it, other than, in terms of your management, keeping the carbon and timber on your property. But otherwise, you're able to recreate, you're able to hunt, you can tap your maple trees. You still retain all of those benefits as a landowner. Okay, so forest management resources. This is a really big part of what we're offering the benefit to landowners. I mentioned access to foresters. So if you do not have a forester of your own, we're going to put you in touch with one. We have a team of staff foresters who work directly with interested landowners. We also have a really broad network of consulting foresters that are familiar with our program. They understand how it works. And they're also in your communities. And you may know one of our consulting foresters, actually. And if you have a forester that you already like to work with who's not part of our network, we're happy to reach out to them, explain the program, and bring them up to speed so that you can continue to work with them. So beyond professional forestry support, we also ensure that our program participants have forest management plans. So if you don't know what that is, it's an extremely valuable document. A lot of folks enroll in our program just, with a real interest in gaining a forest management plan. But basically, a forester is going to talk to you about your goals for your woodland. Maybe you're interested in wildlife and hunting. Maybe you're concerned about biodiversity or invasive species or something. So they're going to talk about your goals and intentions for your property and provide recommendations and document all of that for you so that you kind of have a roadmap for making really informed management decisions over the next 20 years. And that's really helpful, especially if you're thinking about passing your land on to family who might not currently be very involved in managing your forest or making woodland decisions. So that's a really great benefit as well. If you have an existing management plan, we'll take a look at that, review it, see what's in there. And Chrissy and Brittany can answer questions about that and talk a little bit more in depth in their section here in a minute. But we do provide a stipend to have that management plan written or to update an existing plan if it's set to expire within that contract period. So super valuable benefit there with management plans. And beyond that, we also have, a broad network of partnership and relationships with other organizations such as the Audubon Society and USDA and RCS, lots of local and regional partnerships. And we're always trying to connect the dots for landowners to find the best resources for goals, for your goals, and to benefit your community. So those are some of the benefits. And then beyond that, just thinking about the benefit to your community, folks that enroll in our program join a community of like-minded landowners, really wanting to care well for your woods. Katie's going to get into this in more detail here in a minute. But basically, once you're enrolled, you gain access to the family forest, which is essentially a social network for landowners who are interested in sharing ideas, questions, projects they're working on, and supporting each other. There's obviously those financial benefits that I talked about. We all love to get a check, but essentially, that's money that is coming from corporations directly into your pocket. And if you spend that in local businesses, that's supporting your local economy. And that's definitely a benefit as well to your community. And then of course, healthier forests mean, improved wildlife, cleaner air, cleaner water. So, beyond just your own property, you're going to be benefiting that broader landscape and the community and everything that relies on your property. So that's kind of the main idea. Again, feel free to use that Q&A if you have any questions for me. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and pass it over to my colleague, Brittany Vanderwall, who's going to take you through our eligibility and forestry details for our practice.
Thanks, Hattie. So my name's Brittany, and I'm one of the foresters on staff here at the American Forest Foundation based in Northern Michigan. I'll be doing most of the speaking during this section, but I'm going to pass it over to Chrissy briefly so she can introduce herself as well. We'll both be available throughout the Q&A question session if you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. I am Brittany's other half here in the Midwest. We are both senior forestry managers for the program, so we oversee the implementation of the program with our foresters, the consulting foresters, as well as our staff foresters here in the Midwest. So I'll turn it back to Brittany to talk some forestry.
All right, thank you. So a high-level overview of FFCP. So we just crossed our 100,000 acres enrolled threshold not too long ago, and that equates to about 750 landowners that have participated so far in the 4 years and change since we've been operating with the program. So we've grown pretty big, and that equates to about $24 million in payments to landowners that is committed so far. We have a high satisfaction rate from our landowners that have enrolled. We make sure to reach out and ask our landowners throughout the process how they are doing and taking to our enrollment process. We have expanded pretty far across the Eastern United States. We, of course, are focusing on the Midwest today, which equates to Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin. But we're also all throughout Appalachia into the South and up through Maine. So if you have property in those other parts of the country or know those that do and are interested, feel free to send them our way as well. Most of our landowners are with forest management plans and already doing some active harvesting and working with a forester. So a lot of our folks are pretty tuned in to what they've got going on in their land and feel that FFCP will augment what you guys are already doing out there, which is great. A lot of recreational use and hunting and wanting to take care of the land and pass it on to children or grandchildren. So we have a couple different testimonials from landowners. This is Susan, who's been with our program for quite some time, just speaking to the benefits that this program has provided her and her family on their property. It's been a nice revenue stream for her, been a nice revenue stream for a lot of the landowners that enroll. And I often see landowners take the money they get from this program and just invest it right back into their land to do different property improvements and that sort of thing. So basic eligibility requirements is having at least 30 forested acres, and the land does have to be privately owned. There are some limited exceptions that we can look at, but generally 30 forested acres of the correct forest type, and I'll get into those details in the next couple of slides. You can't have any restrictions on timber harvesting, because the whole deal with carbon programs is we want to claim an additional carbon benefit. And if your land is already fully protected from harvesting, then we're not providing any additional benefit to the climate or the atmosphere. So we can't claim that as a positive net benefit. But we'll definitely check that out. Most easements that I see allow for some sort of forestry. So this is a pretty rare example, but you can't have any restrictions on the property to enroll. And of course, the way that carbon programs work, you can't have enrolled in another carbon program. The exception is NCX, which is a 1-year term that used to exist. And with landowners that have tried NCX and have enrolled in that program, we can take a look at that. And we do have a pathway to evaluate eligibility with that specific program. The rest of them, not so much, but NCX, if you have been in NCX, definitely let us know and we'll explore that with you up front. So basic terms about our practice in the Midwest, it's called growing mature forests. It's a 20-year contract, which serves as an encumbrance on your deed, where we transfer the carbon rights for the length of that term so that we can actually monitor the tree growth and count the carbon, if you will. That's what we're looking to do, is to monitor and see how much carbon has grown. So keep that in mind. It is an encumbrance on your deed. 30 forested acres, as I'd mentioned before, at a minimum of 80 square foot of basal area per acre. So that's our density, tree density minimum that we're looking for to start a project. And it has to be predominantly either the maple, beech, birch, or oak hickory cover type, which mostly in the Midwest is sugar maple dominated hardwoods or red oak. That's really what we're looking for primarily. You can't have done any really heavy harvesting on the property that would have put it in jeopardy and below that 80 square foot of basal area threshold. And throughout the contract term, throughout the 20 years, you can't do any intensive harvesting. It has to be a little bit limited. Now, that being said, we do allow for some sustainable forestry to be done throughout the 20 years within a limit. And we would go over those terms with you. We do have an allowance for all landowners throughout the 20 years to continue to do sustainable harvesting. And that does play well with a lot of programs that you might already be enrolled in, you know, different tax programs, like in Michigan, the Qualified Forest Program, in Wisconsin, the Managed Forest Law, in Minnesota, SFIA. 2C. There's a couple of different programs in the Midwest that we do mesh with pretty well. And the forestry allowance allows you to do both, to do that tax break program that you're either already in or interested in, and doing our program as well. We do allow a yearly firewood allowance in addition to the harvest allowance that we allow for landowners to complete in the 20 years. So that is based on your forested acres that is enrolled and scales with your forested acres. You can see the personal allowance table there at the bottom, starts at 5 cords per year and goes up to 25 based on your forested acreage size. And your forest management plan, if you don't have one, Hattie spoke to this, we will provide a stipend to help you develop a management plan, or if yours is out of date, a stipend to update it. But we do request all of our enrollees to have an updated forest management plan. And in the Midwest, it's anywhere from 10 to 20 years, sometimes longer, but generally 10 to 20 years is what we're looking at here. This is the extent of our 3-state in the Midwest region. So the way that this works is we do it based on ecoregion, and south of this line, the tree types are a little bit different, so the program would work differently. So for our purposes here today in this conversation, these are the counties and the areas of the 3 states that we would enroll. If you have land south of these lines in these states, just stay tuned. We will be expanding at some point in the future, but for now, this is where we're focused here. So for forest management plans, this is the stipend table that corresponds to the amount of forested acreage that you have. And we do pay for a forest management plan that covers the extent of your forested acreage, not just the footprint of the program. So let's say, for example, you have, 200 forested acres, but only 50 of it were to qualify. We would still give you a rate that corresponds with 200 acres for a management plan development, because a management plan covers the whole property and it makes more sense to do so. And it's more ecologically minded to cover the whole property with one plan. So this would go to you if you sign a contract. This would go to you in year 1 if you don't have a forest management plan, in addition to your first payment, so that you can develop a plan for your property. And we do work with a lot of really great consulting foresters. As Hattie mentioned, we have a nice network of consulting foresters in our wheelhouse that is very familiar with FFCP and how it works on the ground. So we could put you in touch with one of those individuals, or again, as she said, if you're working with somebody that's not in our system, we can make contact with them and, get them up to speed. That way they can write you a forest management plan if you desire that pathway as well. I'd mentioned easements before. If you do have a conservation easement or a right-of-way easement or some other sort of easement on your property, we are going to collect that and take a look at it to verify that it will mesh with our program. Most of them do. In my experience, the vast majority of easements play well with our program, but just to make sure we're doing our due diligence and don't get you in any trouble down the line, we definitely will take a look at those and collect those early on. And the main thing we're looking for is no restrictions on harvesting, no restrictions on commercial harvesting. Because I'd mentioned before, we can't claim that we're benefiting the atmosphere if your acres are already protected. So we'll make sure to review those easements and determine the eligibility and go to the next step in the process with you once we've taken a look at that. There are a few exclusions that we do that aren't allowed in our projects, and maybe some of these seem obvious, but just in case they're not, I'll go through them. Of course, yards, gas wells, open areas, roads, food plots, etc. Those aren't forested acres, so we would exclude those areas from your project. If you have any buildings or home sites, things of that nature, those of course would be excluded. Small, teeny tiny little plantations can be folded in certain parts of the project, but if you've got a larger, say, red pine or white pine plantation, those are excluded. Understocked areas, the 80 square foot of basal area threshold I mentioned before, our minimum density. Areas that are under that density are going to be excluded if they're larger than 5 acres. So we can be a little creative and fold some small areas into your project, but generally speaking, they have to meet our threshold. If you have any future planned building sites or future plans for some other use on your property, you'll let us know and we'll make sure to exclude those areas before we give you a project as well. And of course, non-forested acres like ponds, rivers, etc., agricultural fields and things of that nature would not be included. I mentioned the personal use allowance. So it's 5 cords for the first 200 acres and it goes up from there. You can sell your firewood from your property. We do allow for that. But anything for personal use has to fall below 12 inches in diameter. Anything beyond that, and it gets into commercial forest territory, which we do have an allowance for, but there's a different set of rules if you start cutting trees beyond that size. So for harvesting, we only allow up to 25% of a reduction of that basal area within the contract area over the 20-year period. So that 80 threshold I told you about, 25% of the basal area starting at time of harvest is what we allow. So when you decide, say you enter, at 85 and you've been in the program for 10 years and decide to cut 10 years into the program, whatever your basal area is at that time becomes your baseline. And then you can only reduce 25% up to 25% from that baseline. So it starts at time of cutting. You have to work with a qualified forester to conduct pre and post harvest reports. That's one of our big requirements, just to make sure that, everything went according to specification. So how that works is you would have a forester come out and they would cruise the property and cruise the trees before the harvest to see what the density is, the starting density. And then after that cut is finished, they would come back out and take another look at a similar level of detail and compare and contrast. And then you would provide that information with us and we'd have it on file. I'd say in my experience, typically it makes the most sense to do this harvest in one go. Economically, logistically speaking, it tends to just be one cut rather than a series of cuts that equates to that 25%. But, you know, each property is different, and that's a logistic question that we could speak with about you when it comes time to speak about your specific project. In addition, the average diameter cannot be reduced beyond a certain percentage. And what that means is we don't want you to take your 25% disproportionately in one area of the contract. It needs to be fairly evenly spread. That way the average diameter stays roughly within the same threshold throughout the contract area. And of course, BMP's, best management practices, they aren't required, but many states do follow them even though they're voluntary. So we would expect that you would follow good best management practices, which is, you know, not cutting right up to a stream and taking care of your roads and trying to prevent erosion. And those aren't things you'd really have to worry about as a landowner. That would be more on the forester that you work with. And if you work with a qualified forester, they're pretty well familiar with those, so you don't have to worry so much about that. Last slide is just another, last slide from me, rather, is another testimonial from our landowner that Chris Johnson out in Vermont that speaks to maple syrup. So we do allow for tapping with our projects. You can have a sugar maple tapped operation within a contract. So that's just another one way that our program provides, you know, flexibility to do more than one thing on the property. So thanks for your attention. Next, I'll pass it over to Katie, who's going to go over some post-enrollment activities.
Thanks, Brittany. I'm Katie Wilson. I am the senior manager over here at the Community and Sustained Engagement team, based out of Northern Michigan also. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the payment structure, what to expect once you enroll, and any next steps for those of you that are interested in pursuing this option a little bit further. So when we get to the stage where you've input all of your information, you've gotten an offer from us, then they will collect project data from an FFCP approved forester, which may be your own consulting forester or one of our staff foresters, to put together an offer for you. And that contract is a 20-year contract. And that payment amount is determined by the eligible area and rate for the eligible practice. So in the Midwest, we have the growing mature forest practice, and that is paid at a rate of $200 per acre. Again, that's based on your eligible area, not your total parcel area. So if you have a 40-acre parcel, but 10 of it is field, then you only have 30 acres that are eligible. That will be what you're paid upon. There's an additional option, which we call the premium option, which would provide 20% more in payments, so $240 per acre instead of $200. And what that requires of you is to get a farm and tract number from USDA. If you already have one, then cool, that's a great option for you too. But with that, it takes us a little bit longer to process the payment. And if you enroll in this option, there's an additional step prior to harvesting, where we need to get a special USDA form done called a CPA 52. And that will allow us to pay you with some special grant funding that we have, and allow you to get a little bit more in your pocket in exchange for just waiting on a little bit longer than what it would normally take to get your payment. And a little bit longer, right now we're looking at like a week or two. So the so that is all of your contract payment. And on top of that, like Brittany and Hattie mentioned before, is we also have a forest management plan stipend. And again, that's based on your forested acreage that's owned. So Brittany can correct me if I'm wrong, but that also includes non-eligible acres. Yes, okay, cool.
Yes.
Thank you. And the great thing about the management plan stipend that I think hasn't been touched on yet is that you can combine it with other funding sources as well. which is great if you enroll in our premium option. You've got your USDA farm and tract number. That makes you eligible to sign up for USDA funding for a management plan on top of the management plan stipend we give. And that should really give you a good base to find a consulting forester to get your plan written, which is really exciting. So then once we have all of that offer put together with your specific payments amount and schedule, we send that over to you as a landowner for consideration. You'll have about 30 days to consider that offer, but the total enrollment process from start to finish right now takes approximately 80 days. So it does take some time. It's not a quick flip of the switch, but that's because we're all trying to make sure this is a good fit for everybody. So here we have a payment schedule that compares the premium option versus the traditional option. There's also a little bit of change with the premium option of how much money you get when, and essentially it front loads the payments. So you get more of your money up front sooner rather than the traditional option where in year 1 you get 20% of your payment, and in year 20 you get 10% of your payment, and then in those intermediate years you're getting 3 to 5% of the total payment. With the premium options in years 1, 2, and 3, you're getting the bulk of your funding, and then it kind of stays through some smaller 2 to 3% for some time until your last 2 years with 5%. So again, that's $240 per acre with our premium option, waiting a little bit longer, having to jump through a few USDA hoops, or our traditional route to avoid that at $200 per acre. So if you are on this call, you may have already gone through some of these steps, but just in case, I'll go through it again and help point you out where you are in the funnel. But if you're interested in seeing if this might be an option for you, if your land is eligible, if this is something you want to explore a little bit more, you can go to the website, which we will pop the link in the chat here in just a second. But head over to familyforestcarbon.org and click on check your eligibility. And use the mapping tool to start that qualification process. So you'll find your land and click on it and answer some questions so that we can make sure that you're the right ownership, the right fit, and that your land is eligible as well on an initial eligibility check. Then you'll schedule a call with a representative about the program specifics and make sure that we are still eligible. There's still, a few things that we need to check on with a little bit of a deeper look. The account manager will provide further information and get some more information from you. Then a forester will take a look either virtually or in person to come look at your property and make sure that the woods is looking the same as what our data looks like online, making sure that everything is kosher and that you haven't recently harvested a substantial amount so that we're paying you the right amount. Then you will review your offer, sign your contract, and that at that point you are considered enrolled. From there, we'll send you your first payment within 60 days. And there's a few changes when that comes to the premium option. But roughly 2 to 3 months, you'll get your first check in the mail, and you'll be able to hire a forester to help you implement your forest management plan and continue other projects on your property. After that, for the next 20 years, it's you and me, and we're a team for 20 years. And we're here to help you. There's a whole team of community managers here to help make sure that you can enjoy your rights under the contract, which does include timber harvesting and hunting, firewood allowance, making sure that you can do that. and able to answer any questions and any support that you might need when it comes to hiring a forester, for example. We can help connect you with foresters. So that continues on for 20 years, and we are able to support you in whatever way we can. So again, familyforestcarbon.org, get started and check your eligibility. Next steps here for you, if you have a personal woodland report already, which is found in your webinar invitation, or there might be another email, a qualification notification email. Click on the report in there, and that from that link, you'll be able to schedule a call, or maybe another call if you've already had one, with an account manager to ask them more questions or look at your specific land a little bit closer. You can give us a call at that number, which is 844-790-0045, or send us an email at info@familyforestimpact.org. And from here, I think we're going to go into some Q&A. So I will go take a look at that. And in the meantime, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, the very bottom of your screen is a little question mark. Click on that and you'll be able to type in your questions. I see we had one question first that I will read aloud from Larry. Is the $200 per acre based on per year or for the 20-year contract? And Chrissy answered that it's for the 20-year commitment price. It's about $10 per acre per year when you break it down annually.
And I'll add that $200 per acre is not what our premium offer is for landowners who decide to go the CSC pathway. So it's $240 per acre if you elect to go the route that I think Katie had mentioned, where there's a couple extra hoops there for you to go through at the end, but it's a 20% increase in payments to go that route.
Thanks, Chrissy. Christopher asked us, what if I sell some land? And that one I can answer. So if you have enrolled your property, once you go to sell some land, say you sell off one of your parcels that you own, we will then need to work with the new owners to see if they'd like to stay enrolled, or if they would like to discontinue from that. However, there are penalties involved that come with unenrolling land, and selling that land is part of that. There's another question from Alex. Can this program run concurrently with the Wisconsin MFL program? And yes, we are able to integrate with that. I'll also say for Michigan, if you're involved with either, or I'll let Brittany answer this question.
Yeah. So the qualified forest program is easier to integrate with FFCP than the commercial forest program, though we do have a pathway to evaluate commercial forest program landowners to see if you are eligible. And for the Wisconsin or for the Minnesota program, I could let Chrissy speak in a little bit more detail, but there's a couple programs in Minnesota that are also tax break programs to do harvesting that are really compatible with FFCP.
Yep, in Minnesota, there's two 10-year programs, SFIA and 2C, and we can integrate with both of those. It is a simple amendment to your plan to incorporate our goals into that plan. The same goes for all of those other tax programs. You do have to incorporate FFCP goals into the plans that you make with other programs that require harvesting. So MFL's big stick there and their big deal is that you have to bring wood to market. So you are required to harvest when you enroll in the Wisconsin DNR MFL program. And so with our program, you're allowed to do that sustainable harvesting that is silviculturally appropriate for those forest type groups that we're able to enroll. It does require a site visit from a forester to come out and take a look at your property. And, you know, I think Brittany mentioned this before, and so did Hattie, but we work with consulting foresters, many of them who are Wisconsin DNR certified plan writers. So they are intimately familiar with Wisconsin DNR MFL and are able to work our program into that one as well.
Thanks, Chrissy. Any other questions? I am not seeing any more questions, but if you think of any, feel free to email us again at info@familyforestimpact.org, or give us a call, and we're happy to answer any questions at any time. But with that, we'd like to thank you for your time, for joining us today, and thanks to my other panelists for joining with us so we can provide some more information.